Hi everyone, I have that it's 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I know that sometimes when we hear that it's time to relax, that is the least relaxing thing. But I hope that you can take this next hour and really dedicate some time for yourselves and enjoy the content. Ask questions if you have them. Feel free to chat or unmute yourselves and ask your questions, and we'll leave time at the end as well. So we have some exciting things coming up. We want you to know about our Well-Bama health screenings that are going to begin on March 4th and our Crimson Couch to 5K program and 10K. And so there's lots of fun, exciting things that are going on with the Well-Bama programs this semester. We also want you to know about our Move Spring challenges that we're having in February in honor of American Heart Month, and so many great wellness classes that are coming to you that I will be teaching and that many others will be teaching over the course of the next few weeks. And so we really invite you to look at this as an opportunity to get involved, and also to be sure to check out the newsletter that went out yesterday, because there's so many great things that you might be interested in pursuing. So today we're going to talk about Road to Resilience and becoming your best self. My name is Abby Horton, and I am a nurse. I'm a certified health and life coach, a Well-Bama ambassador, and your wellness class educator here at the university. And I love talking to you about resilience because this is my research area. So for our goals today, we're really going to talk about stress and how to manage stress in uncertain times. We're going to talk about the importance of self-care, and we're really going to focus in on the practical applications of this content. So learning specific strategies to help develop and support your coping and to help, ultimately foster your resilience. And so those are our objectives for today. So I always like to talk about how to seek help and when to seek help. When we talk about mental health and we talk about stress, and right now in the midst of COVID-19, there's so many things that come up for us. Life happens, and we may need to have some help from a professional. So these are some questions that you can ask yourself. Are you feeling, sad and angry and overwhelmed, or just not yourself? Have you been having unhealthy coping mechanisms? Which I would say that a lot of us have, started to use more unhealthy coping mechanisms to manage our stress right now. And, maybe you've had a loss or a trauma, or maybe you've stopped doing things that you normally enjoy. Those could be signs that you might want to seek professional help from a counselor or, a medical professional. So just keep that in mind if any of that feels like it resonates with you. There are many, many resources on campus and in the Tuscaloosa community. I've listed some here for you, both locally and at the national level. Of course, we have American Behavioral, EAP through our employment here at UA, and many other, resources that you can take advantage of. But we just want you to know that we're here for you, and that if you need additional help with your mental health, that we have that available, and we're happy to connect you to those resources. So I always like to talk about what you can control, because right now, so many things feel like they're out of our control. And so when we think about stress, when we think about developing resilience, we really have to focus in on what is it that I can control. And the goal really isn't to get rid of all of your negative thoughts or feelings. It's not that you are going to be completely stress-free. A lot of times we talk about stress as if we shouldn't have any stress, and that's not realistic. And so I put this graphic together to really be a reminder, not only to you, but to me, that our goal is really to change our response to the stress that we're having, and to not worry about what we can't control, but really to focus in on this third slide, things I can control. So things like your attitude, your actions, your behavior, what you eat, what you don't eat, who you follow, who you unfollow, how you talk to yourself and others, how you set personal boundaries, how you react and respond. All of those things are in your control. Your attitude and your effort. That's a really good way to think about it. And then in this last slide, I love a good Venn diagram. I always have. And, it really is a great visual reminder of the things that matter and the things you can control. Where those two things meet, that's where you should really focus your attention and your effort. So there are certainly things that matter that we can't control, and there are things that, you know, we can control that don't really matter. And so what is it that matters and, you know, that is within our control? That's where we should focus our effort. And I see a hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question if you want to, if that was intentional. Brenda, go ahead, and I'll check the chat as well. You can't speak. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. I will definitely relay that. Thanks, Janet. Well, you can certainly put it in the chat. They may have the settings where you can't unmute today. Absolutely, Stephanie. And we'll actually send you from the Office of Work, Life, and Wellness, we'll actually send you this PowerPoint presentation as a PDF that you can access. And we will send you a couple of other resources. And this will be posted online, so you can always go back and reference it as well. Great question. Okay. So you also can't see anyone else's comment. Okay, so they may have the settings set where you can't comment or see that. So, okay. Thanks for letting me know. They must have it set up as a webinar today, and that's okay. But definitely put it in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer all of your questions. No problem. We can work with that. Okay, so we're going to focus on what we can control. And stress is really how I like to think about it. There are so many definitions, and coming from my medical background, you know, we could get really nuanced in medical with the definitions, and that's really not the purpose of this talk today. We're really just going to focus in on the practical, you know, what can you do? Because that's probably what you're here for. We know that there are, you know, issues and challenges, and so many times presentations focus on that and identifying the problems and challenges. Most likely, y'all probably know where you're needing help. It's just you need the tools. And so that's what we're going to focus on today, is having that tool set. So, you know, stress is really the mental and physical result of a lack of tools to cope with the demands or pressures of a situation. And that is a very practical definition of stress. You know, we're just needing some tools, you know, some toolkit resources, some skills to be able to deal with the demands and pressures of the situation that we're feeling. And so when we think about stress, it's just really the body's autonomic and automatic response to any physical or mental demand that's placed on it. And so stress is necessary. You know, we often think about stress as being bad or harmful or unhealthy, but stress is really, you know, necessary. And I'd like for y'all to start thinking about stress as being necessary. And if you can't think about it as being necessary, think about it as being just neutral. You know, it's whatever emotion you assign to it. And so when we have this automatic response to stress, whether it be a physical stressor like having to lift something heavy, or whether it be a mental stressor like, you know, managing emotions around COVID-19 or your workload, or maybe if you have children, your kids' schedule, whatever it is for you, we have an adrenaline and cortisol release, so a hormonal response to this stress. And oftentimes, you know, we talk about fight or flight, and the image that you typically see is the saber-toothed tiger that, you know, you think of like cave people days, and there's always this image of this fight or flight response where this cave person is, you know, running away, like a Flintstones character, running away from the stress, or the saber-toothed tiger in this example. And either we run away, like flee or flight, or we fight against the tiger. And that's the embodiment of stress. And that's how our, you know, stress response was really designed originally. But now we don't have saber-toothed tigers. We're not living, you know, typically in, you know, times or in, you know, locations where we're having to worry about those kind of stressors. We have stressors from our cell phones and our email and our workload and social media and all of those kind of things. And so our body forms the same kind of stress response as if it were a saber-toothed tiger, except our brain really, in our body, really doesn't know the difference and doesn't respond differently. And, you know, where you would get relief from that saber-toothed tiger because eventually, you know, something would happen and the stressor, the tiger, would go away, our stressor really doesn't go away anymore. And so we're constantly having these, you know, emotions and these feelings and this stress response. And that's what really fatigues us. And so a response that we commonly have that we, don't talk about a lot is the freeze response. And so when you hear someone say that they feel overwhelmed or they feel stuck or they feel like they just don't know what to do next, that's usually the freeze response to stress. And that's really common. And so stress can have positive and negative effects. And some of the negative effects is that you have the fight, flight, or freeze response, and you're in this cycle of that. And so you really have to determine what is your natural response to stress. And I would say that most of us right now usually freeze in response to stress. We just get, really stuck. We pause. We don't know what to do next to really overcome that stressor. And so I see that most typically in the people that I work with, either in life coaching or just in life in general. And so we really have to think about how we can start seeing stress as being necessary or neutral, and knowing that moderate levels of stress are actually important for our well-being, that it actually improves our performance and our efficiency, and that stress may also help to foster resilience. And so there are so many theories about resilience and how resilience is formed. There are, theories about that you're just born, being more resilient or more likely to be resilient, that resilience comes because of stressors, or that there are other components of resilience, that it's a competency-based process. And really, experts can't agree on, exactly what forms resilience in us. And so we're going to talk about the things that we do know. And we know that resilience comes usually from someone meeting a stressor and dealing with it or coping with it in a really healthy, positive way. And so that's what's important about resilience, is that resilience really requires stressors. Resilience actually requires you to do something with it. And, that's a great opportunity, because we all are faced with new challenges right now. And so resilience is that opportunity. It's that silver lining in the problems that we're facing, that maybe we really can have some good outcomes. All right. So some stressors that we can have: transitioning to online learning and online teaching and online work, or hybrid or remote working, family relationships, having to social, or what I would prefer to call physical distancing, business and school closures, and just uncertainty around that, that aspect of it, financial concerns, employment, housing concerns, responsibilities, caregiving or household responsibilities, maintaining relationships can be really difficult right now. And then health and illness concerns, and just, just the unknown, the feelings of uncertainty that I've mentioned. And so this is true given a pandemic or not, but it's just highlighting and amplifying some stressors that were already there for many of us. So when we think about stress, it's important to know what our stressors are and what our triggers are. So you likely know what's causing you stress. And if you don't, I would really encourage you to just take out a scrap sheet of paper right now and just jot those down. If you can think of some stressors, just jot a few of those down, or take out your smartphone and pull up your notes app and jot a few of those down. And then I really want you to think about your triggers, because oftentimes we know what's stressing us out. We know that our workloads might be stressful. We know that managing our household responsibilities, or especially young school-age children, might be stressful right now. There's so many things that we probably could identify. It's the things that we talk about a lot, with our friends and colleagues. This is really stressing me out. It's those things. You probably know those. But triggers sometimes are less obvious to us. And so an example that I give, because I have young school-age children, is dinner time. Dinner time is really difficult for a lot of people, because you're just getting off of work and you're trying to transition into, home life mode, and, people are hungry and tired from a long day. And there's a lot of work sometimes that goes into meal planning and preparation. And so for me, a stressor might be that I'm trying to get my children fed, while just having gotten off work, and maybe a child, drops a plate, or, something falls, and that happens a lot in our household. And so a trigger for me is not just that I'm concerned about getting my kids fed and moving on to the next thing, but it's that, fork falling, it's that, plate dropping, it's something breaking. So if I know that that's likely to happen, what I can do is I can start to, really think about how am I going to respond when that happens? Because oftentimes as humans, we act shocked when things like that happen. And when we think about it and we take time to really analyze it, that happens often. And we shouldn't really be surprised that a child drops a plate, right? That's not shocking. But we sometimes act as if that shouldn't happen, just like we act like we shouldn't have stress. And so if we can write down the stressors that we have and then just a handful of the triggers that come up for you a lot. It might be that, it's stressful to drive in traffic to get to work, after having some time at home. And so a trigger for you might be that you leave the house late in the morning or that you get caught behind traffic or something like that. A trigger for you might be those things. And so you could write those down in relationship to trying to be punctual to work. And so we really want to identify those areas so that we can try to avoid or limit the triggers and then explore ways that we can really manage our stress around those better and have some good self-care. And then also when we are late or the plate does fall or, dinner burns or what have you, whatever it is for you, right? That we already have decided how we're going to respond. And it isn't that we're going to have, an explosive reaction, which is sometimes what we do, right? We get very angry or upset or, we let that ruin the rest of our day. We can go ahead and decide that we're just going to count to 10. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back when we feel, more calm and we feel less triggered by it. And then we're just going to calmly, clean up the spill, or we're going to make sure that we, set our, alarm to leave 5 minutes, earlier for work or whatever it is that practically helps the problem. And that really helps you not trigger that hormonal release with cortisol and adrenaline and everything else that happens in that hormonal cascade. And then you can recover from that stressor better if you're not activating that response all of the time. And so that is what is going to kind of lead us into our stress management. So we know that good stress management is all about having a plan. So we know that when we manage our stress in a positive way, we have, physical health improvements, we have more energy, more stamina, our emotions stabilize, so we feel happier and more positive. We can focus better, which is going to improve our productivity, which is going to make our stress less. We can build skills and confidence, which leads to self-trust, which I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. And then we can actually, foster that resilience that we're seeking right now. And so when we build our skills and our confidence, that's so important to trusting ourselves. And so many times people don't realize that they don't trust themselves. But every time we set an alarm and we snooze it, every time that we say that we're going to work out and we don't work out, every time that we promise our, spouse or partner or our kids or our friends that we're going to do something and we don't do it, every time we miss a deadline or we struggle to meet a deadline, we're, basically telling ourselves that we can't trust ourselves, that we're not trustworthy to do those things that we said we're going to do. And so building skills and keeping our promises to ourselves and others is really the way that we build our confidence. And when we build our confidence in ourselves, that's where you really start to see positive change. And so I teach about stress management. I teach about mental health. I do this resilience workshop. I teach about healthy habits and nutrition and all of these wonderful things. But if you don't have that borderline, self-confidence, that foundation of self-trust, then all of the other things that you're trying to do that are really positive in your life are going to be harder because you're constantly fighting that narrative that you're not going to do it, right? Why start a new exercise plan because I've never been successful before? Why start a new nutrition plan because I've never been successful before? And so doing small things, keeping those promises to ourselves and others is going to build that skill set, that confidence level, that self-trust, and then we're going to be really equipped to make some changes. So resilience, how well do you bounce back after challenges? And so looking at resilience, the American Psychological Association says that it's really the process of adapting well in the face of adversity. And there's, obviously more there on the screen, but I think that that's just a wonderful way to frame what resilience is. It's how well do you bounce back after you have a challenge. And so when we think about resilience in relation to health and what does health mean, so many times health looks like a number on a scale, or it looks like, a number in your clothing, or, it's some metric that you do at the doctor's office. And really, I want you to think about health as being more than the absence of disease. And I want you to think about health as being more than a number. Health can really be defined many ways, and certainly knowing your BMI, knowing how much you weigh, knowing your lab values, all of those things are important because it's good feedback for you. But health is not just solely measured in those numbers. It's just one part of the story. It's just one piece of the puzzle. And so the World Health Organization, as far back as 1947, said that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And so, of course, they've updated this definition, and they still include this definition as part of that. But I wanted you to see that for a long time, we've known that health is more than just the absence of disease, but we often don't talk about that. So when we think about how we can really define health and how we can help people be healthy, we have to think about people and their values and their personality and their lifestyle and what works for them. Because, what is considered to be a healthy food, we say that this food is good or bad, and we say this food is healthy or this food is unhealthy. But you can still have healthy foods that aren't good or aren't healthy for you, right? And so if we can stop labeling food as good or bad, and if we can stop labeling food in, that way of saying that this is all healthy or this is all unhealthy, and really start to look at individuals and what their needs are, we can see a big difference in our health and wellness and in our overall well-being. So the lifestyle impact on health is, just remarkable. And so we know that many variables influence how a person thinks and acts. And we know that their health beliefs come from those thoughts and those actions. And we also know that health beliefs and practices are really influenced by, our experiences, our upbringing, and, our values and our needs. And so when we think about our needs, they really drive our approach to health and wellness. And so many of you may be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but at the bottom, the base, the foundation of that pyramid on this picture is the physiological needs, the food, the water, the warmth, the rest, all of those basic needs that we have. And we really can't move up through those levels of the pyramid to reach the very top, where we're really seeing that our needs are being met at all levels until we get the basics down. And so knowing what our needs are really important when it comes to making some changes. And change is what's going to really make you draw on your resilience and be able to adapt and be able to respond to the stress that you may be feeling right now. So resilience and health have an important relationship, and health affects resilience and resilience affects health. And so it's really time for us to take back control of what we can control and start to make baby steps toward those improvements in managing our stress really well. So I want to talk about cultivating calm. It's important that we acknowledge our feelings and that we just let it be okay to feel anxious and to feel stressed. Many times we feel like it's not okay to admit that, it's not okay to share that. And, we have to really normalize talking about our mental health. So it's important to stay informed, but we need to take breaks from, people that expose us to things that are triggering. We need to take breaks from the news. We need to take breaks from our phone and our email. We need to offset the stress that we feel with positive and calming activities, and to really promote hopefulness and optimism, which are really positively associated with resilience. And some practical things we can do is, really plan and prepare for the unexpected. Our brains like to feel safe, and so we're going to do the thing that we've always done. Our brain is really kind of set on default mode, where we do what we've always done because it feels safe and it feels like it's certain, even though we know that's not necessarily true. And so that's why it's so hard to overcome, less healthy habits. It's because our brains would rather us do something that is familiar than to try something that could be great for us that feels unsafe and feels unfamiliar. So when we can, keep some semblance of normalcy, routines, rhythms, planning ahead for groceries and having supplies on hand at the house, having needed medications and extra toilet paper and paper towels. Those are all ways to make your brain feel safe enough to start to make changes in other areas of our lives. So a positive reframing technique, and one of those kind of toolkit resources that I think is so important that I use with my students and with people who do life coaching with me, is to really think about this model of changing your thoughts. And so we really think about our circumstances, and we think about all of the things that are stressing us out, right? And for my students, it might be that they're trying to go to nursing school in the middle of a pandemic. For you, it might be that you're trying to work in the middle of a pandemic, or that you're trying to parent in the middle of a pandemic. Whatever is true for you, just write something down that feels hard for you right now in this season. And so that's your circumstance. And then your thought about that, you can have many different thoughts, but I just worked this one out for you. So if you're thinking, I'm trying to work in the middle of a pandemic, what do we usually say? We usually say or think, oh, that's so hard. My life is so hard. And then when we think my life is so hard, I can feel it. We immediately feel overwhelmed, right? We immediately feel stressed. And so when we feel overwhelmed or stressed, we're having those negative emotions, right? And then we have this action. So what do we do when we feel stressed or overwhelmed? We might watch Netflix, or we might, go and eat something that feels, satisfying, like a carb or a donut or something like that. So we could take no action, or we could take some, unhelpful coping mechanisms, and we usually do nothing, or we feel stuck. Okay. And then the result is that life is stressful because we have gotten to this cycle, this negative feedback loop of feeling like life is hard and things are overwhelming, and we just feel stuck all the time. And so life is stressful, but we can retrain our thoughts. We can't change the circumstance that we're working in the middle of a pandemic, but we can change our thought about it. And so if we think, "Oh, I'm working in the middle of a pandemic, but you know what? I'm strong and I'm capable. And if I want to, I can really change my, situation by controlling what I can control." And so if we change this thought, we go back and we're going to do that whole process again. So the circumstance didn't change. So that's why I have this note here. Please notice the circumstances did not change, but our thought changed about it. So we say, instead of feeling overwhelmed and like life is hard, we're saying, I'm strong and I can change things if I want. We automatically start to feel more hopeful and more optimistic. And when we feel hopeful and optimistic, we're going to get to work. We're going to take positive action. And then when we take that positive action, things do start to change. And so a way to do this is you can start journaling these circumstances, thoughts, feelings, and actions and results out. And, take some time in the morning or some time in the afternoon or even at nighttime, and write down some of the things that are, stressing you out, that are triggering you. And then start looking at your circumstances and seeing, is there a way that you can start to positively reframe what you're thinking? And there's always a way, right? And sometimes you have to say it before you believe it. So sometimes you have to say that you're strong and that you can change your circumstances or change your attitude. You have to say that before sometimes you can do it. And that's okay. And so writing this down, journaling this out, will be a really helpful tool for you that eventually you'll be able to do this automatically without having to put pen to paper and actually do this. And so I think that's really important for you to start thinking about how you can incorporate this into your life. So some things that have come out of COVID with, thinking about how to face things, and obviously, this presentation has been adapted to account for COVID, but these are things that are important, at any time. Focusing on what you can control, acknowledging your thoughts and feelings, coming back into your body, because you know that when you feel stressed, when you're late for work, or when somebody's dropped a plate of food or broken something at dinner time, you have this kind of out of body experience because you're so stressed and overwhelmed sometimes. So coming back into your body and just realizing, okay, I just need to take a minute, I need to deep breathe, I need to count to 10, and then re-engage in what you're doing, because oftentimes, distractions really, get to the heart of our stressors. We're distracted, we're trying to multitask, and that usually leads to more stress. And then take committed action. So when you decide that, you need to change a thought or a behavior, go ahead and commit to doing that. Open up to your friends and families and colleagues. Kind of really think about your values, and if you're living from those, identify your resources that you have. And I'll definitely will be sharing some of those for y'all at the end. And then, of course, COVID related, disinfecting and distancing is good. That physical distancing, but not, I don't like to call it social distancing, because you can still say socially intact from a safe distance. So a nurse is always going to tell you to disinfect. And then maintaining normalcy. There's some tips here. And again, this is good, just good advice at any time in our lives. But there's a video, and when you get the PDF, you'll be able to link out to it. But really taking care of your mental and physical needs, your spiritual needs, practicing mindfulness and focusing on your breathing. Those are some great ways to start to take control of your situation and to be able to start making positive improvements toward your stress management. So staying connected, I know that you've probably heard this. I've included it in a lot of my presentations recently, but just remember that there's always a way to stay connected. You just might have to think outside of the box or do something that you typically wouldn't. Taking walks outside, having virtual dinner parties, or mailing snail mail, traditional cards and letters, or social media, or even calling or texting people more often. Those are all great ways to stay connected, and humans are really built and hardwired for connection. And so when we deny ourselves that connection and that free time, that really does, create a burden for us mentally and physically, because we're hardwired for connection, and we like meaning, and we need to have that social aspect to our lives, and we can do that safely. So if you're like me, you probably always really liked a permission slip. I know I did as a kid in school. I always liked to getting a permission slip to go do something. And so this is your permission slip to put your health and yourself first, to say no, to set those good boundaries, to ask for help, and to carve out time for things that make you feel good. And you're already taking that first step by being here today. So super proud of you for being here on a Friday afternoon. I've listed some coping strategies for you on this slide and the next slide. And so I always say, when people feel overwhelmed, typically you probably do feel overwhelmed if you're thinking about stress management or resilience. And so, hitting pause and just resting and resetting, when our phones don't work, when our computers don't work, like my computer crashed yesterday, the thing that we're always told to do is to, turn off the computer, the phone, whatever it is, and give it a few minutes and turn it back on. And sleep and naps and rest are our on off button. That's what we have to do to reset. And so do that, and then start doing some of these practical things I mentioned, like journaling and tracking your stressors. Set realistic expectations for yourself and start trying to make things more manageable, just from a practical standpoint. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I just want you to know, baths and chocolates and, all of the, fun foods and fun things that we do on the weekends, those are important things. But that's not all that there is to self-care. And so sometimes self-care is really having to parent yourself and do some, some internal work and do some journaling and figuring out what's important for you to be really happy and successful, and what works for you right now in this season. We all have seasons of life, and so in this season you might need to make some changes that you haven't had to do before to be able to manage your stress well. And so another list just of some fun things I think are important. Gratitude is really important, and that can be a part of your journaling practice. If we start acknowledging things that we're grateful for, it's very difficult to be stressed when we are practicing gratitude. Research has shown that gratitude is really one of the most effective ways to manage our stress. And I think, again, unplugging to rejuvenate is so important. Getting out in nature, those are all amazing ways to be able to really detach yourself from the fast-paced world that we're living in. And I see there's a question, so let me check that. Okay. I answered that earlier, so. All right. So some wellness basics that I want to mention for you today, because a lot of times when we're dealing with stress, we're seeing the physical effects. When we have, mental strain, that creates a physical strain on our bodies. And when we have physical strain, that creates a mental strain. And so our mind, body, and spirit really work in tandem, work together. And so sleeping well, not just, 7 to 8 hours, but having good quality sleep. You might get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, but that doesn't mean that you're well rested. So if you're going to sleep and you're waking up the next morning and you feel, as tired or more tired in the morning, there may be some things going on that you need to, really see. Is there a medical reason, or is there an environmental reason of why I'm not sleeping well? And so it's not just about the quantity and number of hours, it's about the quality of hours as well. So staying hydrated, which is typically drinking about half of your body weight in ounces a day, but usually no more than 100 ounces. That is the new recommendation. A lot of times 64 ounces, which has been the principle of, hydration for forever, since I was a child, for 30 years or more, has been 64 ounces. And that's really the minimum number of ounces you need. A lot of people do better closer to that 100 ounces, but it's usually half of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 200 pounds, it would be 100 ounces. Striving for a healthy plate, eating half of your plate of veggies. And so making sure that you're having, colorful fruits and vegetables, that you're eating the whole rainbow, not just beige and green food, but you're eating the purples, the reds, the oranges, all of those wonderful colors. You also want to make sure that you have at least, a complex carbohydrate, a healthy fat, and protein at each meal, because sometimes we can have physiological stress because our blood sugars are fluctuating throughout the day so dramatically. And if you strive to have those 3 components on your plate at each meal and in your snacks, that will help level out your blood sugar. And then moving your body every day. That doesn't mean that you're doing a formal exercise program every day, but that you're dancing, you're walking, you're doing things that, are out of your normal routine. To keep your body moving and doing well. And so our bodies are designed to move, and we sit a lot. And then meditating 3 to 5 minutes a day. I think that's so important. And there are so many great apps that you can use. My Life is my favorite, but Calm and Headspace are great ones too. And just 3 to 5 minutes a day of meditation in the morning or in the afternoon or at bedtime can really be a great way to start really connecting to yourself and noticing your stress. And so I always put the start here pin, like this is your GPS pin that we're dropping, because so many times, if you're going to start managing your stress, or you're going to start trying to build resilience, or, create healthy habits, or whatever your goals are, if you don't have these 5 things that are going to help you thrive, if these things aren't being done, you're going to probably have some challenges with meeting your other goals. So I always tell people, regardless of what class it is, regardless of what your goals are, start here first and then make the other changes that I recommend. And then just some reminders about avoiding, self-medication, because, when we, consume alcohol in excess, or caffeine, or energy drinks, or tobacco products, or, even foods, we can really use that to manage our stress and use that as a way of self-medicating. And so just take a moment to see if that's true for you, and to see if that's something that you need to decide if you need to make some changes there. So I want to remind everyone that finding balance looks different for everyone. So, these pictures here are pictures of stacked stones that are called cairns. and they're really popular in the San Francisco area. They're a form of art, but what I love about these three images is that it's a great visual reminder that all three of these, stacks of stones are in balance, right? They're standing, but the balance looks different for each of them, and each of the rocks looks different. And so it just is a reminder of our individual, preferences and our individual experiences, and to know that what works for me may not work for you. So just take what resonates and try to implement those one or two things at a time, and take it really slowly, because we often only see success at the end. We don't see all of the work that went into making those good, healthy changes, and that can be really discouraging. If you're reading someone else's, final chapter of their health and wellness journey, and you're just starting to write your health and wellness journey, that can be discouraging if you're using comparison in that way. So I've got a toolkit of resources here for you. And this part right here is just really brainstorming. So jotting down and journaling ideas and taking time to think about your life. Think about why you came to this class. Why did you enroll in the class? Think about your needs. What are your stressors? What are your triggers? What are the things that you're really needing to find some margin, in your life? What mentally, physically, spiritually do you want to work on? Those are all great things that you can journal, and you can start that now, or you can start when the class is over, or maybe this weekend, thinking about these things, right? And it's going to change, like I said, throughout your seasons of life, but it's important to get a baseline of where you are now. And so this is really carving out our action plan. And then once you're able to really identify the stressors, the triggers, all of that, and the needs that you have, your why for wanting to know more about resilience, then you can start to look at your core values and your beliefs. So what is important to you? What is your reason for why you do what you do? Is it your family? Is it, the students that you take care of? Is it the, great programs and things that you know, are a part of, the departments that you work in on campus? Do you find your meaning and purpose there? What are your core values and beliefs? And we're going to connect that to, crafting a personal mission statement, because if you know what's important to you, and you know what your needs are, and you know about your stressors and triggers, then you can really start to develop your roadmap for resilience. And then you can reference the toolkit of resources, and then hopefully create your own. And so you'll use the things that I suggest to really create a menu, so that you can choose from that menu. Okay, I'm feeling stressed. Here are one or two things I'm going to try to see if I can get back control of my stress. So this is an example of how you would look at your core values. There are so many lists that you can find online, but these are some that I found particularly, fun and important to me. And so I am really concerned with being curious and purposeful and paying things forward. And I'm really proud of having grit, which is like resilience, and being grateful. And so when you think about your values, all of these values are great. But if you can only pick 10, that gets harder. And if you can then only pick 3, that gets even harder. And so I would suggest starting with listing out 10 of your values. And then from that list of 10, find a list, use this list, but, just write those down, okay? And then narrow down to 2 or 3, which gets very, very difficult. And then those values are really going to help you find out what your purpose and your meaning are. And you may already know, but you want to make sure that you're checking in to see if that still feels true for you. And then look at those values and think about, are you living intentionally from those values and that belief system? And a lot of times the stress that we feel isn't just about our workload. It's not just about, COVID-19, or it's not just about kids or family members or relationships or whatever it is for you, right? It's not just about that. Sometimes it's that we're actually not living in alignment with our values and our purpose and our meaning. And that's causing additional stress on top of being late for work, or on top of a kid dropping a dinner plate. And so this causes you to really look deeply at your life, and it helps to clarify and identify what's important to you. So then you can really start to craft a personal mission statement, because now you know your stressors, you know your triggers, you know what you need, you know what's important to you. And now you can start to say, okay, what do I want to focus on now? What do I want to accomplish? Who do I want to become? And so this is great at the beginning of a new year, because rather than focusing on, resolutions, you can focus on creating and crafting the life that you really want. And so you can use these, sentences here and then plug them in with the underlined words, which are your values, and say, it is my personal mission to live each day with curiosity, purpose, and gratitude so that I can live my best life and pay it forward. I will do this by prioritizing my health, continuing to learn, and practicing gratitude. And so that's a really, simple, short, easy to put together personal mission statement. And then when you're having stress and you're having to make decisions about, what do I need to be involved in? What do I need to say no to? What boundaries do I need this year? You can go back to this personal mission statement that reflects all of that work that you've done and say, okay, does this line up with that? If yes, then maybe you say yes. If no, maybe you say no. And I love this quote by the author Lewis Carroll that says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And it's so true. We have to know our end destination. And so going back to this, notion of road mapping and GPS, when we need to pull up our GPS to go somewhere, we have to know where we are, right? If you're putting in an address to somewhere you don't know, and you're wanting some instructions, you're wanting to hear Siri tell us where to go, you've got to know your location so you can put your address in. So it's your starting address. You've got to know where you're starting from. And then you've got to know where you're wanting to end up. You've got to have an end address. And that's the truth when it comes to personal development, when it comes to health and wellness, resilience, stress management, all of that. You've got to know where you are, which is all of that work we just did, thinking about all of those wonderful things, stressors, triggers, needs. And then you've got to know where you want to be. And so what are you going to focus on? What are you going to accomplish? Who are you going to become? That helps you know your end destination so you can put that address in and you can eventually get there. And so this is a roadmap to resilience, and later you're going to be receiving an email with this document, and you're going to be able to print it out as many times as you want, and you'll want to do this, fairly often, a few times a year, I would think, to really look at your personal mission statement. Is that still true for you? Is that still what you want your mission statement to be? And then think about, why you are resilient. What makes you a resilient person? We have all survived 2020, so you all have some resilience. So you just have to think about what are the things, the qualities, the traits, the characteristics that have made you resilient. And then write down an example of where you showed resilience in your personal or your work life, okay? And then I want you to think about what's important to you. So look at that list of core values and beliefs and things that you brainstormed in your journaling and write those 10 things down. And then I want you to really narrow down to just choose 4 of those and then kind of go over to this area and just pick your top 4. And that's going to be really challenging. I found it to be extremely challenging when I did this. And then I want you to think about how you're going to live those values out. So if you say that family, which is probably going to be on your list, family is important to you, it's a core value or belief, then how are you going to live that value? And I want you to think about something that's practical. So for me, if I said that family is important to me, which it is, then I might say that we're going to have a family game night every month and really prioritize that. And so family game night is how I'm living the value of family is important to me. And so I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to plan for it. I'm going to order pizza, which is what my kids really like. I'm going to put it on the calendar at home. I'm going to put it in my calendar. I'm going to shut my phone off so I can pay attention to my kids. And that's how I'm going to live out that value. Okay. And then I want you to think about what are some roadblocks or limiting beliefs to this success. And it might be, well, I've never been successful before, so I don't think I can be successful now. Or it might be that, my phone, it's a really difficult time and I need my phone. So my phone might interrupt me. So that might be a roadblock. And then once you have those listed, come up with a solution. What is the solution to the limiting beliefs or roadblocks you have? And it might just be that you have to shut your phone off for the night. It might be that you just, put it on do not disturb for a few hours. So this is gray box right here is helping you plan for success. And then, of course, I like to have a quote. I'm known for loving a quote. So I think this is important to remind us, persistence and resilience only come from having been given the chance to work through difficult problems. So this is, reiterating the fact that stressors and challenges in our life really do help us become more resilient. And then I always like to end with a positive affirmation. So writing something that's really going to be positive and uplifting that you can repeat to yourself almost like a mantra when you're feeling stressed or challenged with this. And then remembering to write down a few things that you're grateful for. Usually we say 3, but write down as many things as you can think of that you're grateful for. And anytime you want to be making changes in your life or you need to do a check-in with yourself, journaling some things out that I mentioned earlier from that list and then using this roadmap can really be beneficial to you and a great tool. It's something that I use and I really recommend it to you. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to go through this because you're going to have access to these. But this is a TED Talk on mindset. Carol DeWitt is the leading expert on mindset and how that plays a role in our lives. And so this is a TED Talk that she's done. It's a really great, accessible TED Talk for you, less than 20 minutes. And a TED Talk on stress. So this is how to make stress your friend. And it talks about how important it is to see stress as neutral and necessary. And so I think you'll really enjoy this TED Talk as well. And it'll give you some more details based on what we talked about today. There's also a video here on breathing techniques. So many times, we can have anxiety or stress that is coming from a medical or physiological reason. It's coming from our body. And a lot of times it's because we talk so fast. I definitely do. We talk so fast and we take such shallow breaths and we let our blood sugar fluctuate so much that we can really cause some physical forms of stress and anxiety in our bodies. And so this is a breathing technique that teaches boxed breathing, and it helps you reset your autonomic nervous system when you're getting really stressed and anxious because you're just not taking good deep breaths. And there's a lot of great information on the web about that. I also like to share this Mel Robbins 5-4-3-2-1 technique. She is the author of the 5-second rule. She has had, a syndicated talk show and is on all forms of social media. And she talks about having the courage to really just move when you feel stressed. And so she says that when you feel stuck, the best thing to do is to take action. And so she uses the 5-4-3-2-1 and she pretends to just be like a rocket blasting off. And she'll say, okay, 5-4-3-2-1, Mel, and she'll say that out loud and close her eyes, and then she just makes the decision. She gets out of bed. She just does the next right thing. And she used that to help herself when she was battling a depression and was having a lot of life circumstances that were hard. And she didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. And she decided that she was just going to 5-4-3-2-1, count herself down and get out of bed that day. And she has done remarkable things for mental health in the U.S. from her personal experience. Really inspirational person. Here's some self-care on the go, and this just builds on the coping strategies I shared earlier. And then I'm going to toggle through. These are resources, some books and some websites, some podcasts and some TED Talks, and another great video on how you can become more resilient. This is Cy Wakeman, and she has a YouTube channel, and she works in human resources and does a lot of consulting nationally. And she does a lot of work around resilience and personal development. So she's a great resource. And then I always like to tell people to have something on the horizon to look forward to. So it's the 2-2-2 rule, where you go out for an evening every 2 weeks, or go out for a weekend every 2 months, or go out for a week, maybe a vacation every 2 years. And sometimes, especially during travel restrictions or budgets or, busy family life, that's not possible. So what I tell people to do is to try to plan something every 3 to 4 months, once a quarter to look forward to, because we really need something to be excited about and to plan for. That's why we love birthdays and celebrations and holidays, because they're built-in things to look forward to. And so if it's been a while since you've had something to look forward to, I would really suggest thinking about that this weekend and putting something on the calendar. And it could just be takeout in a movie or Netflix or something from your your favorite channels and your favorite restaurant. It doesn't have to be extravagant or expensive. It could be a walk, it could be free, but there's some really great things that you can do to give yourself that hope and optimism that we all need right now. And then I always like to encourage you to celebrate your wins. That looks different for everyone, but for everything that you accomplish, small progress is still progress. So celebrate your wins along the way and give yourself a lot of grace. We would love for you to follow us on our social media channels, and we do have blogs that relate to the classes that I teach, and we have, lots of great content on our website and Facebook and Instagram. So please follow us there. And if you're interested in health and life coaching, you're welcome to reach out to me at my email, which is abby.horton@ua.edu for more information. I'd be happy to send you some information about life coaching. It is free to all UA employees as a benefit for you. And then, of course, we have some great resources and information on our wellness site and our COVID-19 site. So I'm going to go to the Q&A and the chat for any questions. Thank you for the compliment. Someone said it was an awesome presentation. I appreciate that. I'm very passionate about resilience. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thanks for all of the comments. I know I can't actually unmute you when you're raising your hand because it's set up as a webinar, but if you want to type it in the question and answer or in the chat, you're welcome to. Yes, Shelly, you will be able to see this. It will be uploaded. Ashley Bowman is going to send out the email with the resources I mentioned. So this PowerPoint as a PDF and the worksheet will all come to you as 2 attachments, and then this will be posted online for y'all to go back and look at later. Thank you all so much for all of the kind words. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss any questions. Okay. Thank y'all so much. Y'all are so kind. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that. Do y'all have any questions that I can answer? I know we're going to be right at time, but I do not mind staying and answering your questions. How can you become a life coach? There is a certification process. Just reach out to me and I'll be happy to let you know. Attendance is auto-recorded, so yes, you will get your credit for attending this class today. Great question. Right, let me double check I haven't missed anything in the chat. You're not a fan of journaling, is there another technique that you recommend? So I would say even just, journaling can feel like you have to free write and you have to do it for a long time, and that can feel really hard. Kristen, if you just jot down some notes in your app as you're like going to lunch, or when you get to work, maybe you thought of something when you're driving. That always happens when our brain is occupied with something else, like cooking dinner or driving the car or eating lunch. We always come up with brilliant ideas. So I mean, you literally could voice record your thoughts on something like, oh, this is stressing me out. That's journaling to me. If you make a note in your apps on your phone, or if you just jot it down on a scrap piece of paper, that's journaling to me. You don't have to have a fountain pen and a fancy journal to journal. But that's what we think of when we think of journaling. So I think that would be a really great way for you to start to see progress without having to do something extreme or something that feels uncomfortable or unnatural for you. Let me know if that helps, Kristen. Oh, y'all are so sweet. Thank y'all. Let me make sure I haven't missed any other questions. Those of you that are free to go if you don't have questions or don't want to stick around, but I just want to make sure that everyone's questions get answered. But y'all are free to go otherwise. I think I've got everything. All right, awesome. All right, well, if y'all think of questions afterward, please let me know. And y'all will definitely be receiving the email with all those resources. And the presentation will be uploaded to the wellness.ua.edu site either later today or on Monday. So we'll get this over to the wellness office and they'll get it online for us. But thank y'all so much for being here. I hope y'all have a happy Friday and definitely plan something to look forward to this weekend. All right, roll tide, guys. Thank y'all so much.